Things like that will change, and how we are part of the support for the monarchy may change slightly. The crystal chandeliers in Burghley's great hall blazed through that November night as Mark Phillips, former Olympic gold medalist in equestrianism, the ex-husband who had been quietly erased from the royal family, stepped onto the dais of honor. The applause thundered as if saluting a lifetime of silent devotion. But then the screen behind him flickered, and a voice, his own voice, spliced and dripping with venom, echoed through the hall, mocking the monarchy, accusing them of forcing him out years ago. The room froze, then erupted into chaos. In that instant, Mark caught Sarah Ferguson's gaze from the far end of the hall. Eyes cold, a smile slicing across her lips like a blade. Amid the whispers and suspicion that rippled through the firm, Mark turned to the one person who might still listen. And he understood one thing clearly. Someone wanted to bury his reputation for good. But who, and why now? After all these years of silence, November at Burghley always carried its own mournful hush. This year's gala was held to honor Mark Phillips, the man who once lifted British equestrian glory to its zenith, now returning to Burghley with the calm bearing and faint solitude of someone who had tasted both triumph and bitterness. Mark entered quietly, the old medal on his left breast catching the light. He no longer bore a title, no longer carried the royal prefix, only the memories of having once stood among them. The giant screen behind him lit up, replaying grainy black and white footage of his glory days. Mark and the British team leaping obstacles. Princess Anne in her classic riding hat watching from the stands. Then abruptly, a harsh crackle tore through the speakers. The screen stuttered, the image warped. A voice, hoarse, furious, unmistakably his, boomed out. "Charles never understood me. William's no better. It's all just a game to keep people away from the throne they're so desperate to protect." The sound hissed, clipped, then died. No one spoke. Only a thick, suffocating silence remained. For a few seconds, Mark stood frozen. His face betrayed nothing, but his eyes flashed with shock. The hall erupted into murmurs. Some guests gasped, others shook their heads. The organizers rushed the stage, voices trembling. "We're terribly sorry, Sir Mark. It appears there's been a technical fault." Mark stepped back, forcing composure. He scanned the elegant rows. Familiar aristocratic faces twisted in embarrassment. But at the far end of the hall, amid the stunned crowd, stood Sarah Ferguson. A glass of red wine in hand, lips curling into an unreadable smile. Their eyes met, only for a heartbeat, yet long enough for an icy shiver to race down Mark's spine. When the ceremony was suspended, Mark left the stage without a word. He strode straight to the back corridor where technicians were frantically checking equipment. The faint smell of burnt wiring hung in the air. One of the crews stammered that the audio files had been swapped with an unknown recording. Mark demanded they play it again. They said it had been deleted immediately after playback. He didn't believe them. Hours later, when the hall had emptied, Mark returned alone. Beneath the dim glow of hanging bulbs, he stared at the deserted stage, where only hours earlier, his honor had been buried beneath a filthy trick. He phoned Burghley's head of security and demanded the surveillance footage. The images were grainy, but in the bottom right corner, Sarah Ferguson appeared, crimson velvet dress, moving swiftly through the corridor to the technical area moments before the fake recording aired. Mark replayed the frame again and again. He didn't want to believe the theory forming in his mind, but everything aligned too perfectly. Sarah, former wife of Prince Andrew, stripped of every privilege after her husband's financial scandals. Sarah, who had once proposed a joint equestrian charity project, he had bluntly refused. They hadn't spoken since until tonight. In Mark's mind, the pieces clicked together. He knew her type, ambitious, always clawing for a way back into royal light, whatever the cost. But to pull this off, she needed an accomplice. When he left Burgley, it was late. On the gravel drive to the car park, mist drifted beneath the headlamps. Mark paused, looking back at the castle, its windows dark. He heard the wind threading through the trees and felt an unfamiliar chill. A foreboding settled in his chest. This was no technical glitch. This was a deliberate strike. Mark clenched his fists, his face hardening. Honor was all he had left after leaving the royal family. And now someone was trying to steal that, too. Sliding into the car, he glanced in the rear-view mirror. In the darkness behind him, Burgley House loomed, silent, watchful. The morning after Burgley, rain fell like silver needles across the old window panes. In his small Gloucester cottage, Mark sat before a cooling cup of Earl Grey. Overnight, the world he had guarded for decades, integrity, honor, respect, had collapsed beneath one doctored soundbite. He opened his laptop, rewound the video a reporter had sent. The hiss, the gasps, then his own voice, distorted, venomous, chilling. Memory pulled him back months earlier to the day. Sarah Ferguson knocked on his office door at the National Equestrian Center. She arrived in a deep green dress, smile wide, eyes practiced at commanding a room. "Mark, we've both been there. We both know what the royal family needs. They need humanity, warmth, no more cold walls. I have a charity project writing for disadvantaged children. If you join me, everything changes." Mark remembered looking up, his gaze steady. "Sarah, the idea is sound, but I don't work with projects whose finances are murky. I need to know where the money goes, who manages it, and why my name or the royal name is being used when the royal family no longer has anything to do with either of us." Sarah's smile held, but her eyes flickered like a candle in wind. "You're still as arrogant as ever. You think you're different, Mark. You left too, just like me. Only difference is you were forgiven and I was not." He remembered her voice, then soft yet bitter, as if she had reached the edge of her pride. When she left, her perfume lingered, cloying and suffocating like an unspoken threat. Now every piece snapped into place. Her presence at Burgley could not have been coincidence. He rose, stepped outside. Rain streaked his old leather boots. He needed the truth, not just to clear his name, but for honor. Honor was the only thing that kept a man like him alive in this world. That afternoon, Mark returned to Burgley. He met Thomas, head of security, a former army officer who had served at royal events. "Thomas, I need the technical area footage." 10 minutes before the recording played. Thomas hesitated. "You know I can't do that without official orders. Then treat me as an old friend, not a royal. I just want to know who went in there." Thomas paused, then nodded. They sat in the monitoring room. The screens showed murky frames. 2034. Sarah Ferguson glided past the corridor, whispered something to a man in black, then vanished behind the technical door. Mark gripped the armrests. "I knew it." He whispered, "She won't stop until someone falls." Thomas turned, eyes worried. "What will you do next?" "Find proof. And I know where to start." Meanwhile, across London, Sarah Ferguson sat in her drawing room, fire roaring. An open magazine lay on the table. Headlines screaming about the Burgley scandal, rocking the aristocracy. A photo of Mark frozen mid-stage, lights flashing across his face. Beneath it, Mark Phillips mocks the royal family. Truth or fabrication? Sarah sipped her wine, smiled faintly. For a moment she felt satisfied, but the smile didn't last. "This won't end here," a voice said behind her, her trusted assistant. The gay-haired sound technician stood in the doorway, clutching an envelope. "What are you afraid of?" Sarah asked evenly. "I don't want to be dragged in any further. I deleted every original file as you asked, but I feel someone's watching." Sarah tilted her head. "You were paid handsomely. No one will trace anything. Best you leave the country for a few months. Scotland, perhaps. No one will notice." The man nodded, eyes panicked. When he left, Sarah sank back into the chair, staring into the flames. In the firelight, her face glowed crimson, laced with a bitterness she tried to hide. In the days that followed, London drowned in fog and amber street lights. Sarah attended a small Kensington party where gossip traveled faster than wine. Everyone talked about Mark. Perhaps he really said it. Maybe he was drunk. The royal family must be tired of self-righteous relics. Sarah smiled, joined the conversation, every word honey-laced with poison. Mark is honorable, but that very honor makes him think everyone else is wrong. Perhaps he forgot the royal family doesn't need judging. Heads nodded. In that world, rumor needed no proof, only a prominent voice to start it. Across the country, Mark returned to his timber house after a long day of investigation, spreading old documents across the table. Staff lists, Sarah's invitation email copied CCTV stills from Thomas. The desk lamp carved harsh light across his tired but resolute face. He annotated every frame every second. Sarah appeared 3 times, just seconds each, but enough. Mark muttered, "No one in the royal family will believe me without ironclad proof. Charles will stay silent. William will keep his distance. Only one person left, only Anne." Her name surfaced, dragging a tangle of emotions. They had been divorced for decades, yet he still remembered her calm eyes, her voice, both steely and warm. Anne had always been the only one in the firm who truly understood him, and the last person he wanted to ask for help. Burghley had fallen quiet again after the scandalous night. Yet for Mark, every paving stone still echoed that forged voice. He parked at the side gate, showed his pass. Thomas had arranged everything, full backstage footage and the list of personnel with system access that night. In the small, antiseptic-smelling control room, Mark sat before the monitors. The corridor camera was grainy, noise like snow. Sarah Ferguson appeared, 7 seconds only, crimson dress, leaning to speak to someone in shadow. Her hand rested on the man's shoulder as he bent over a laptop. Then they vanished behind the door. Mark froze the frame, zoomed. The man's face emerged dimly. Mark's eyes narrowed. It was the sound technician, Wright Harper, who had once worked for William. Mark had met him several times. Thomas placed a hand on his shoulder. Reed quit the morning after. Reason on file, mother gravely ill. Returning home, Mark didn't look away. "Do you know where home is?" "Yorkshire." "But I'd bet he's not there now." Mark nodded. In the dim light, his eyes burned with cold determination. "Then I'll find him. If anyone's behind this, Reed is the only living link." The drive north took over 5 hours. Misty pastures stretched like an old curtain. Each mile a step backward into a past where he had worshipped honor like religion. He stopped at a roadside cafe, checked his phone, a text from Thomas, "Be careful. Sarah seems to know you're looking for someone." Mark sighed, pocketed the phone. Sarah would never sit still. The tiny Yorkshire village lay nestled between hills. Wind whistled through moss-covered tiles, carrying smells of damp earth and wood smoke. Mark found Reed's old cottage door locked, dust thick on the steps. Neighbors said they'd seen Reed leave 3 days ago with a suitcase. No goodbyes. Mark thanked them, moved on. The village pub smelled of stout and damp wool. The landlord looked up, recognized him. "Captain Phillips, never thought I'd see you here. Watched you in Munich 72. Mark gave a curt nod, eyes fixed on the man in the shadowed corner. Disheveled hair, old coat, evasive glance. Callum Reed's mate, right. The man flinched, glass trembling, I don't know what you want. I just need to know where Raid Harper is." Silence. Wind rattled the door. Mark sat slowly opposite him. "You can think I'm the enemy, but I'm trying to keep us both from drowning." "Who did Raid work for, Callum?" "Sarah Ferguson." Callum gave a bitter laugh. Voice. "I'm not saying anything, but you don't understand, Mark. In their world, someone like Raid is just a tool. He took the money, then they erased the traces." Mark stared for a long moment. He stood, left. Callum remained, knuckles white around his glass until it creaked. That evening, Mark stopped at her roadside inn. Rain hammered the roof. He opened his laptop, reconnected with Thomas. The image flickered. "I found a lead. Callum, former Berkeley staff, knows Reed. He said someone is erasing traces. I need you to check if Reed received any transfers last month. I'll try through the committee's secondary accounts. And you, what will you do if you find him?" Mark was silent a long time. "I don't want to destroy anyone. I just want the truth back. But if the truth is buried, I'm ready to dig up the whole grave." He closed the laptop, stared out the window. In the darkness, lorry headlights swept past, illuminating the mirror. His face older, sharper, eyes still burning like they had in the royal stables years ago. 2 days later, Thomas texted Raid is at a cheap hotel near Manchester. False name, Daniel R. Harper. Mark didn't hesitate. He drove 3 hours through rain. The hotel squatted in a gray suburb, neon sign flickering. He crossed the lobby, took the stairs to the 3rd floor. Room 3. 112's door was ajar. Cigarette smoke and fear spilled out. Reed sat hunched in the corner, gaunt. When he saw Mark, he leapt up, eyes wide. "Sir, what do you want? I didn't do anything wrong." Mark closed the door softly, voice calm, but icy. "I'm not here to threaten. I just want to know who told you to do it." Reed shook his head, sweat beading. "I can't," they said. "If I talk, I won't live." Sarah Ferguson. Silence. Reed's gaze trembled, then dropped. Mark stepped closer, placed a print out on the table, still from the Birdley CCTV. "She met you, didn't she?" 7 seconds before the audio swapped. "I just need you to confirm." Raid looked up, eyes wet. "I didn't know it would blow up like this. They said it was just a prank, that it wouldn't go public, but it did. And now the only person who can tell the truth is you." A long silence. Outside, rain pounded the tin roof like a countdown. Finally, Reed nodded. "All right, but I want protection. I have the transfer records through an offshore account under the name of a children's charity." Mark clenched his fist. For a moment, relief washed through him, followed by a slow, burning rage. Sarah hadn't just humiliated him. She had defiled the royal honor he still respected even after leaving it. "I'll keep you safe," Mark said, voice low. "But you have to face this." Reed bowed his head. "I know, and that's why. I want it over." Mark left the hotel into the night. Wind whipped his face, stinging cold. He stood in the empty street, yellow light pooling on his calloused hands. From afar, church bells tolled dry warning. Morning in Belgravia was cold and ash-gray. Sarah Ferguson sat among lavender, sent coffee half cold. She reread the papers. Every article now framed the Berkeley glitch differently. Mark Phillips, the silent gentleman, and the royal family's shadow. She smiled. Everything was proceeding perfectly. Sarah had learned one lesson living beside the monarchy. People don't need truth. They need a believable story. And she was rewriting that story line by line. She rose, draped a crimson cloak, looked in the mirror. Her auburn hair still blazed like fire, the last remnant of her glory days. The glass reflected a face carved by years of judgment. "If they won't let me back," she whispered, "I'll make them remember me." That day, Sarah moved. She didn't need mass media, just a few laced calls. The British aristocracy didn't spread gossip like the masses. They whispered with smiles and insinuation. No one did it better than Sarah Ferguson. At noon, she appeared unannounced at the Cavalry and Guards Club in Knightsbridge, where retired officers still read the Times and reminisced. Sarah glided in, conversation flowing. "I adore Mark," she said with perfectly pitched regret, but perhaps the pressure became too much. "He once told me the royal family had been unfair to him. Maybe he just couldn't hold it in any longer. Poor man, one sentence he once told me and it was enough. In a world where every rumor began with, 'I heard that,' truth became irrelevant." That evening, Sarah returned home. Her phone buzzed. "Unknown number." He found Reed. "They have the transfer proof. Be careful." Sarah's grip tightened, eyes flashing weariness. "Can't let him go further." She immediately called an old Daily Mirror reporter who owed her from the financial scandal days. "Jeremy, I have a story. Mark Phillips is panicking, and I can give you letters he sent me complaining about royal hypocrisy. Of course, I only want to protect the king's image. If it's real, it's exclusive." Jeremy breathed. "You know, I never lie. I just don't want this to spiral." Sarah hung up, leaned back. The old thrill returned, manipulating public opinion with charm and calculation. Yet deep inside a cold hollow remained. She knew Mark wouldn't stop, and this time he might have something she lacked. Anne's trust. "That princess," she muttered, "always thinks she's above everyone. This time I'll drag them both down." 2 days later, the article appeared. Page 3, between news items. "Mark Phillips, the gentleman with 2 faces." It hinted he had sent complaining letters to an unnamed woman. No proof, but the wording sowed doubt. Sarah read in silence, then called Jeremy. "Perfect, but let it spread naturally. I don't want anyone tracing the source to me." She sat the paper down. Her hand trembled slightly, yet her lips stayed firm. "One more move," she whispered. That night, she hosted a small dinner. Former royal patrons, a few journalists, a retired MP. Wine flowed, laughter rang. Sarah circulated. Every word weighed, every glance loaded. One remark made the table roar. One smile enough to kill a man's reputation in a single evening. When the party ended, Sarah stepped onto the balcony, gazing at the empty street. Cold wind lifted her hair, carrying away the laughter inside. In that moment, victory tasted bitter. She felt a strange emptiness, as if she had just destroyed the last memory of being called Duchess of York. Her phone buzzed again. Second unknown text. They met Reed. "Marcus heading back to London. May contact Princess Anne." Sarah's face blanched. Anne. The princess's face flashed in her mind. Calm, icy, always correct. Anne was everything Sarah despised. The woman forgiven, respected, while she was ridiculed. "If she interferes, I lose everything," Sarah whispered. She returned to her desk, opened the laptop. In an old contact list, royal organizers, a Clarence House press officer. Sarah typed fast, sent anonymous emails, internal alert. "Mark Phillips is attempting to accuse Sarah Ferguson, risking royal reputation. Recommend intervention before spread." As she hit send, her hand shook. Screen light reflected exhausted eyes. Fear crept in, not of exposure, but of sliding into the abyss of oblivion. Morning in Gloucester greeted Mark with thick fog, cold and white as ash. He sat by the window, pale light on aged hands, eyes lost in thought. He knew the royal family hated scandal. They would rather bury truth than let it rot in public. Charles would sidestep. William would stay silent, and only one person remained. Her name rose like an old echo. Anne. He had sworn never to seek her help again. Their love had once been beautiful, simple, enduring, but ultimately crushed by royal rules. They parted quietly without hatred, yet never looked back. And now he was about to break that vow, not for love, but for honor. Clarence House that afternoon was a still oil painting. Late autumn sun spilled along corridors, gleaming on polished floors. The elderly butler led Mark through doors he once knew well. yet every step made him feel a stranger. When the door opened, Princess Anne stood by the window, upright, silver-streaked auburn hair, stern face. She still carried the old bearing, few words, but eyes that commanded caution. "Long time, Mark," her voice low, slightly husky yet powerful. "Yes, over 2 decades you're here about Burleigh." Mark nodded, placed the dossier on the table. "I'm not here for pity, Anne. I'm here for honor, mine, and the monarchy's." She studied him, expression unchanged. "The firm will not touch old scandals." Charles was clear. "Silence is the only way to preserve image and let Sarah Ferguson rewrite history." Mark's voice dropped. "She set the trap, paid the technician, spread lies. I have proof and said nothing at first." She opened the folder, turned pages. On the table, sunlight slanted across a bank statement. £50 000 from the Duchess Trust to Reed Harper. Below the CCTV, still Sarah touching Reed's shoulder in the Burghley corridor. She looked up, shock flickering. "My God," she breathed, gripping the folder. "You're certain this is real?" "I verified everything, and I have the accomplice's recorded confession." Silence stretched. Anne walked to the desk, hands braced on the wood. The initial steel was gone, only the weariness of someone watching former royals decay. She closed her eyes, sighed, then lifted her head, decisive. "Very well, I will help you." Her words rang like a bronze bell. Mark looked at the woman before him. No longer the wife he had loved, but a warrior carrying the pride of a dynasty. "I'll speak to Charles," Anne continued, "but I need one more thing. The original recording of Reed's confession. Send it to me. I'll show William. If he confirms technical tampering, no one can deny it." Mark nodded. "Thank you, Anne." A ghost of a smile touched her lips, so faint he wasn't sure it was real. Late afternoon, Anne sat alone in her office. The dossier lay open beside cold tea. Outside, church bells drifted through the window. She looked down at a magazine photo of Sarah. Radiant smile, defiant eyes. "You've gone too far, Sarah," Anne whispered, "and this time you will pay." She dialed an internal line. "Call Clarence's house. I want to see the king tomorrow morning." That same evening, Mark left Clarence's house. Rain hammered down heavy drops on his coat. In his pocket, the USB holding Reed's confession, the evidence Anne needed. Relief mingled with unease. Storm was coming, and it would sweep more than Sarah away. Mark paused, looked up at the slate sky. He knew Anne would keep her word she always had, never promising what she wouldn't deliver. And this time he believed not only his honor would be saved, a rotting system would be forced to look at itself. That morning, London's sky hung low and gray. The royal family convened a closed meeting. No press, no statement, only the involved. King Charles, Princess Anne, Sarah Ferguson, and Mark Phillips. Mark walked the long corridor, shoes echoing softly on polished wood. Black suit, gray tie. Calm exterior, but eyes like tempered steel. In his hand, the neat dossier and the small USB final proof. The door opened. Anne was already there by the window. When Mark entered, she gave a slight nod, no words needed. At the head of the table, King Charles Roman III turned pages, face heavy, eyes deep and sorrowful. Sarah Ferguson arrived last. Deep green dress, high collar, makeup flawless. Yet the golden light couldn't hide the shadows under her eyes. Nights without sleep. She smiled thinly, curtsied. "Your Majesty, I only wish to clear up misunderstandings." Charles did not reply. He gestured to Anne. She stepped forward, voice clear, each word edged. "I have reviewed the evidence. Mark Phillips was accused of mocking the monarchy at Burghley. However, security footage and technician Reed Harper's testimony proved the recording was spliced and substituted." Sarah gave a soft laugh, head tilted. "Princess Anne, I fear you trust a traitor too much. Who knows if he was paid to lie?" Anne placed the dossier on the table, voice cold steel. "You're right, Sarah. Reed could lie. That's why I asked Prince William to analyze the original audio. He confirmed sophisticated editing possible only by someone with event system access. Reed Harper. Mark pulled out the USB, set it down. This contains his confession. He details how you approached him, paid him, and ordered my voice inserted. I've listened repeatedly. Your voice is unmistakable. Sarah froze, the fragile smile gone. She looked around for allies, none spoke. Charles leaned back, pensive. Sarah clenched her fists. Her voice trembled yet clung to pride. I did nothing wrong. Mark walked away. I was cast out. He is praised as an icon. I'm a laughingstock. I only wanted everyone to see we're the same. Non-E in this family is truly clean. No. Anne cut in, voice resounding. We are not the same, Sarah. The honorable take responsibility for their mistakes. The others only drag everyone else down. The room fell silent. Outside, distant thunder growled. Sarah stared at Mark, eyes blazing hatred. You win, Mark, but don't think this earns you forgiveness. In the royal family, the honest are always the first to be discarded. Mark rose, voice terrifyingly calm. I never sought forgiveness. I sought truth, and now the truth is spoken, not to save me, but to end lies that have lasted too long. Charles signaled. Guards, Sarah Ferguson, his voice ice. From this moment, you are stripped of all projects, funds, and honorary titles connected to the crown. All financial support ceases immediately. Sarah gave a broken laugh, tears spilling. She turned away, voice choking. You can take everything, money, titles, even my name. But you cannot take away the truth that this royal family destroyed me first. No one answered. The door closed behind her, heels fading down the corridor. 3 remained. Charles sat silent, hands trembling on the armrests. At last he spoke, voice. You deserve respect, Mark, not just for victory, but for keeping your self-respect when others lost theirs. Mark bowed his head. Thank you, Your Majesty. I never wanted honor, just to be myself. That afternoon, Mark left Clarence house. Rain had eased. Pale sun broke through cloud. He stopped at the old Burghley grounds where it all began. Empty chairs, banners fluttering. He breathed deep, wet grass and earth filling his lungs. The scent of freedom, of truth washed clean. Anne had kept her word. Days later, the official palace statement, brief, nameless, blameless. Following review, we confirmed the Burghley recording was fabricated. The matter has been handled internally. No mention of Mark, no mention of Sarah. But for those who knew, it was enough. Yet in his heart, Mark knew nothing truly ended. Out there, press would chase new prey. The firm would keep hiding, and Sarah, stripped of everything, would not vanish. People like her never vanish. They wait. In your opinion, was Sarah Ferguson's orchestration of the trap against Mark Phillips an act of blind jealousy or a desperate attempt by a woman once rejected by the royal family to claw back her right to exist in the world that cast her out? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.